What's up, guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the NeoVintage podcast. I'm Jabril, and I'm here with
Steve. Hope everyone's doing well out there.
And for you guys who have never seen the show before, we're just two guys that like to talk over the biggest stories in gaming, but we always like to start with what we've been playing. So, Steve, what you been playing?
So not too much. I've just been spreading my time across a few things while I finish up a few other little things. But the new things to discuss, obviously, since last recording, the Halo Infinite campaign has released. So I've been playing a lot of Halo Infinite, still playing a lot of the multiplayer, but I've kind of tapped out on what to say about the multiplayer. We all understand. I think it's almost everyone's on the same agreement that progression and all the playlists and all the little minute things need work. But the Halo Infinite campaign is something I've been diving into a lot, and just mainly because I have mixed feelings. Luckily, the gameplay is actually really solid. Obviously, it's very familiar to what we've been playing in the multiplayer. But I'm still mixed on how I feel of this new direction, this open world as they're claiming for Halo Infinite. And a lot of it works. There is something cool about just being Chief, running around an area and getting things done. Obviously, you and I are really big into the, what we call the checklist sort of type of game, where it's like, here's this area and here's things to do, and just knock them out as you can. And that works really well. I do think now that a lot of this information's come out about, 343 saying a lot of the game had to be scrapped, and at some point the game was rebooted, and it's very clear, especially when you play those first two missions, and those first two missions are hardcore old school Halo, and then immediately you're given this giant map. So there is a slight jarring aspect. The map, as cool as it is to explore, I think it's very empty, very sort of not much to do. Like, I'll go through a cave and there's just nothing in the cave. Maybe sometimes a random grunt with a quick smart line, but it's just like kind of missing something. And now again, as that 343 story is starting to progress more, it's starting to make a little more sense now, where it's like, what they say, something like 2/3 of the game was cut. I see where there's things missing, but overall, I'm really enjoying it. Though I'm missing some of that more direct style of Halo, that more direct style of storytelling. This one's relying a lot on audio logs, and I do miss some of those sort of set pieces, which I know apparently like later there are a little bit more. I have not completed the story, but a lot of these cutscenes are you just Chief standing there with his hand out talking to the weapon, and that's kind of it. Like, it's different backgrounds, or he's there with his hand out talking to the weapon, and it's interesting. I think it's slightly jarring story wise, because most people, I'm not gonna say everyone, most people are coming off of they replayed all these Halos, and a lot happens between Halo 5 and Halo Infinite, especially, and then the key game is Halo Wars 2. So there's a lot of questions, because Halo 5 ends with pretty much Cortana being a huge threat, and this one, I think immediately Chief is like, "Nah, don't worry, she's fine." And like, there's a lot of the stuff like, what happened? And I don't think they do a good job of retelling, especially since they want Halo Infinite to be the sort of new stepping stone, where veterans and newcomers are coming. I don't know how our newcomers are jumping in without at least reading or watching a sort of recap video, because there's a lot of tell. Like, I see what can carry them, but I can also see what could hinder them, which is a little awkward. But I'm enjoying my time, and I just kind of, the map is kind of big. I don't like that everything's just green grass and a few spaceships. I do miss sort of those alien planets and those winter levels and stuff like that. But I gotta see it through before I do a final judgment, because it may all pay off at the end. I just can't say so yet. But I am really, really liking it, just because of the sort of open sandbox nature brought into the campaign. So I'm having a lot of fun with that. The only other thing I've been really playing, again, two other small things I've been playing. I've been playing some Danganronpa Decadence, which is the, obviously, Danganronpa collection that was released on Switch. So I've been replaying through the Danganronpa games. I've bought Danganronpa 3 on Vita, on PS4, and I've yet to play it, so I don't know what's going on with that. So I blasted through Danganronpa 1 pretty quickly. I'm pretty familiar with it. I had to look up a guide or two just to kind of get through it. I know that story pretty solid, so I went through it. Working my way through Danganronpa 2, and it's hard to it's hard to just not give this game so much praise just because it's so weird. It's obviously the sort of point and click, almost visual novel, sort of Ace Attorney, detective work, and I know you know a lot about it, and I think I'm glad the game is generally getting more popular again. So I'm really excited to get through the rest of 2 to then jump into V3 finally to see these characters. I see these characters and it's really awesome. I have not touched that spin-off mode. I think it was Danganronpa S, which is that 4th sort of board game thing that's coming.
Oh, that party thing, yeah.
Yeah, just because I'm worried about maybe spoilers of maybe Danganronpa 3. I've not looked at anything that it's weird though because it's a new one for Switch. It's one chip, but when you put the one chip in the Switch, it's 4 different like block icons, which I thought was really weird. They just all 4 go on there, and usually I'm used to like Switch being like, all right, now here's this to download these chapters. They're just all on one chip, but they read separately, so it's interesting but cool because it kind of throws off my my balance in there. But it's a weird one. But so I will be jumping into V3 hopefully soon over some of the holiday breaks here. I'll have some time to do V3. And maybe this other mode, I don't know if it's any good, that spin-off mode, but I will be checking out. And then the last thing I'm playing, I'm actually gonna save it because it ties into a later topic. So I'll save that. But those are really what I've been playing, and I haven't played too much of this third game enough where I even give some impressions. But it ties into a later topic. So that's all I've been playing again, and on top of cleaning some other stuff on some of that backlog. Enjoying some back compat thanks to Xbox and everything they've been doing. So that's all I've been playing. So Jabril, what have you been playing?
Yeah, so I'm in pretty much a similar boat to you, where a couple of the things that I've been playing kind of tie into later topics, so I can kind of give my deeper thoughts there. But yeah, I beat Guardians. Very positive about it. That I would say the final 3 or 4 chapters run atrociously. like it's really, 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 really rough. At least on Xbox, I can't speak for every console version. But yeah, the performance falls apart really bad. Like I'm talking about frame rates like 5-10 frames per second. Like it looks like a slideshow. It was going so slow. But it sucks because otherwise the first half of the game ran actually surprisingly well. But yeah, and not to get into spoilers, but when you start dealing with some of the primary antagonists of the game and you arrive in their sector or their ship, that's when I think things start kind of falling apart in terms of the performance. So it needs a lot of work there. But overall, I'm super positive about it. Love the story, love the characters. And so, yeah, as of right now, to be honest, it's almost my preferred Guardians depiction that I've ever seen, to be honest.
Yeah.
Overall, certainly I think there are iterations of like the MCU version or the comic version that I prefer over others, but generally speaking, I like this Peter Quill a lot. Rocket I think is pretty consistent across the 3, so that's why I'm saying like this one doesn't, I don't think, edge out the other ones, because I think the Rocket character, other than fleshing him out, is fairly consistent. But I really love Drax in this one. Groot's really consistent. Mantis I think is one of the best iterations of Mantis I've ever seen, comics or movie, to be honest with you. And yeah, like I like Gamora a lot. So like I love what they're doing there, and I really hope that there's more to it, because I think they wrap it up in a way that if it's a standalone, like you're not uncomfortably waiting for more. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I think it's open enough that they absolutely could dive back into this universe and play around with some more stuff. So really love that. Also, I went back to Assassin's Creed. For you guys who have maybe been paying a little bit of attention, there was a new, I don't know if you consider a DLC, expansion, whatever. They dropped some new stuff in there, and it was kind of two-sided. There was some stuff on Valhalla, and there was actually an Odyssey update as well. And it was a crossover event between Cassandra and Eivor. And also there was something related to Ragnarok that they dropped on Valhalla, which is a whole nother thing. Has more to do with like when you go into the dream world and you play as Odin and stuff like that. I don't really love that stuff, so I left that part of it alone. But yeah, there was a crossover event where they dropped a new mission line into Valhalla and to Odyssey that basically connect the two. And it's really, really awesome. Now, I can't go into too much detail regarding the narrative without giving major Odyssey spoilers, so I'll leave that alone for anybody who's interested in playing Odyssey. But if you finish Odyssey, you'll understand why this is possible in the first place, because obviously the natural question you ask is, well, if Valhalla takes places in the I don't know, 400 AD or something like that, and Odyssey takes place 600, 700 years before then. How could this possibly happen? Well, they explain stuff like that. It's basically anything that sounds weird in Assassin's Creed, just chalk it up to the Isu, and that's pretty much exactly how it happens. But yeah, overall, I think it's really, really cool. I think both mission lines take advantage of the respective games. Odyssey's one has, I think, a better play cycle to it, where like the different encampments you bump into and stuff like that, and the overall just traveling and navigation of that quest line is better. However, I think Valhalla's story is a lot better and a lot more heartwarming. So there's a lot to like there. So for anybody who's a fan of Odyssey or Valhalla, I definitely suggest you go ahead and check out that mission line. I would only suggest that you probably beat both. Ubisoft has come out and said that you could play it after doing Chapter 1 of Valhalla, and you can play it after hopefully beating Odyssey. I would suggest you beat both, to be honest with you, because there's lots of implications to what even happens to Eivor that I think could spoil some later story beats of Valhalla. So I would suggest beat both, then go to those mission lines. And thankfully, they're not structured in a way that I think you'll bump into them accidentally. You would kind of have to go a little bit out of your way. You would have to know kind of what you're doing to be able to launch those missions in the first place, because you're traveling to an entirely different place. So technically, it's also a map expansion because they give you a new island in both games. But the island is not massive. They didn't put a whole bunch of stuff in it, so it's by no means on the level of the Siege of Paris or Wrath of the Druids DLC expansions that I talked about earlier this year. So overall, I think it was free too, and that's another good thing. So for a free little DLC expansion, I'm really positive about it. So that was really fun to go back to both of those games. Also, Halo Infinite, I've also been playing a lot of. I'll reserve a lot of my deeper commentary on it for later in this show. But overall, I would say that I'm really, really enjoying it. I'm playing predominantly the campaign. I did jump into the multiplayer a little bit, and I was just so ungodly bad that I was just like, all right, well, this game has far advanced past my abilities. The hook shot is just amazing, though. I love it. The interesting thing about it, I would say, without going super deep into it, is that it's fascinating for it to kind of give you a very traditional, almost combat evolved experience at the kind of like those first couple missions. So as somebody who, like me, I've played all the Halo games, but I've dived deep into only really the first two when they came out, and I've gone back to Combat Evolved and I played the hell out of that one. And so that's kind of what my idea, like my muscle memory of Halo really is. It's much older. And so I felt like, even though this was a brand new game, it feels amazing, it has all these new stuff, it actually felt very familiar to me in a very good way. And I found I was able to snap back into it pretty much immediately, and that was really great. In a way that I actually found 4 and 5 a little bit more difficult to snap back into. Yeah, it felt great, and it's really interesting how, like, even though it's structured at first like a traditional Halo game, it quickly turns into something that I would actually say is much closer to like a Far Cry game than anything. With so much to the point that you're like navigating parts of the map where they have like high value contacts that you need to like intercept and kill, and I'm like, literally those are like the lieutenant system of the Far Cry games. So that's really interesting for them to take that in the Halo direction. Do I think it works? I mean, I think your mileage may vary depending on like what type of gamer you are. Like, there are people who love Ubisoft games like you and I, and then there's people who hate that system. They hate the checklist thing. And so I could see why the linear kind of like Halo experience, you kind of just go through different facilities, mission 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, where if they play this game, they'll be like, what the hell is all this? So I understand why that could be jarring, but for me, I actually feel like it's pretty smooth transition. I find it very manageable personally, and I like it quite a bit. I wish the world was a little bit more fleshed out, but that I'll leave for later. So yeah, Halo Infinite overall very positive on. And then lastly, I've also jumped into Paper Mario on the Switch. That came to the N64 online service. Now, as you guys remember, I said that I wanted to cancel it, and I do. I am not positive on the service overall. But the problem is, when I went, I already paid for the year, and I was like, you know what, like, let me just get the year out of it, and then when it's time to renew, stop it. Might as well. I already paid for it. And so, and I am kind of more really curious to see by the time it's ready to renew what the service looks like. Because again, it's not like I'm so crapped on the service that I don't think it'll ever be worth it. I just don't currently think it's worth it. At some point in the future, if the expansion pass includes, N64, GameCube, Sega Genesis, and then maybe Dreamcast, and they have pretty robust catalogs for there, and you get that plus the Super Nintendo plus the NES, and all that comes together for $50, where you basically get a very robust collection of Nintendo's history. I think there's something to be said there for $50, but as it stands right now, I don't think it's worth it. But Paper Mario came to it, so I was like, let me give it a spin, let's see it. And yeah, it holds up really well. I think it looks really clean on the Switch. I'm playing it on the OLED. And yeah, it never was like a super high moving game to begin with, so I'm not experiencing any major frame rate issues in the same way that I've noticed in Zelda and Mario 64. Where this one, I feel like it's a lot more slower paced anyways, so I think it runs a lot better, looks really clean, and yeah, it's still a really, really fun, amazing game that I still love a lot. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I've been playing that I could talk about right now without getting into what we're going to talk about later. So yeah, it's been a really interesting week trying to juggle different things. And and I guess to cap it off, I had enough of the GTA trilogy, honestly, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah, I played the hell out of it. I got to the very last mission of Vice City, and for anybody who knows, there's just some annoying parts to it that, like, I was playing. It's not that it's too difficult. It's that it doesn't feel great, like the controls. So like I was just not in the mood for it, and I was like, you know what? I think that's enough out of you three. So I took them off my console. I was like, that's enough out of you. So yeah, I played the hell out of all three, but I was like, that's enough. I respect these games. I like them in many ways, but there's just so much that I feel like it's just tough to go back to. Like, and I feel like some people have an easier time than others. And for me, it's been tough. I find San Andreas to be a little bit more manageable, but I just find some of the missions they have you do are just so annoying. Like when you have to do like these plane training in San Andreas or in Vice City, you gotta steal some freaking ice cream truck. It's just too much. Like I'm like not in the mood for all that. So yeah, that's everything I've been playing.
Oh, cool. Good to hear that. I'm interested to hear later on. Quick question though, because we know you're the GTA man. Have you not jumped into any of this GTA Online?
The
DLC?
contract?
The contract.
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing about the contract. So for anybody who knows about DLC drops in GTA Online, knows that they have a massive buy-in. That's very common. They require some kind of facility or some kind of vehicle, or both, to be honest with you, to be able to do the mission, for example. So like Cayo Perico, for example, required you buying this massive submarine, and usually it's anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 million buy-in of in-game currency. And the contract is no different. It requires you buy like an agency office type facility that the cheapest I think is like just over $2 million. And right before the DLC was announced, I actually had spent a significant amount of money buying this mobile operations center, and so I only had 700,000 in my my inventory. And every month until they drop the next gen versions, they already committed to giving you $1 million a month. And so right now, to be honest with you, I could sit there and I could grind it out 100%. I have so many drug and different types of operations that can generate a lot of income. I'm not interested in grinding like anymore. Like I've been playing this game since 2013. Like, to be honest, like I'm exhausted by the prospect of selling any more drugs or stealing any more cars. Like I just can't. And so right now I'm honestly in a waiting zone where it's like I refuse to grind for $2 million, so I'm just going to let that come into my bank account and then I'll jump into it. Because as much as I really want to play for it, to be honest with you, like I'm super over GTA Online's nonsense, and the mission, the way they structure the whole economy of it is just cancer. And so I'm honestly just waiting so I can get $2 million and then I could do the buy-in and play it. And not to mention, in March, the next-gen versions are coming, and I'm going to be jumping into the story mode into there, and I'm excited for that. So that's where I'm actually willing to jump in and actually go deep in. But for GTA Online, like if they make something difficult for me, I'm not going to play ball, to be honest with you, because I spent years. I mean, again, like how long has it been? 8 years. I've been playing almost continuously of this, and I'm just. exhausted. And I know some other people 8 years in, they have like so much money and houses and stuff like that. But to be honest, I was never into the grinding thing. Like I don't play with a lot of people. I kind of just, I buy my houses, I play around with my cars, I mod my cars, I buy clothes. Like I play it a little different. And so, yeah, I just don't have 2 million sitting on there. So unfortunately for me, I cannot jump into that. Like I had to wait for Cayo Perico too. So this is not new for me. I always have to wait on the DLCs.
Okay. So we'll eventually get an opinion from you on how that goes. So I'm excited to see.
Yeah, just give me into the top of January. I should have that money ready because I already got like I think $850 in my money right now. So I just need that mill dropped in. I grind a little bit more from there. I'll be able to do the buy-in, and then sometime in January I'll have all the details for you guys.
All right, cool.
So I guess we can jump into a quick follow-up for you guys. So the Game Awards happened. We talked about that last week, and we named off all the candidates and all the different categories. And so I kind of listed a couple here to go over some of the interesting winners that happened. And so we can kind of go over it and share our thoughts and what we think about it and whether we think it's cool. So let's just start with the most hot button topic related to the Game Awards. It was Game of the Year, and yeah, It Takes Two wins. Now, that was a very surprising thing to a lot of people. And then to other people who had their, let's say, conspiracies about the Game Awards wasn't surprising at all to them. If you understand the developer and his relationship with Jeff Keighley. I personally do not think that the Game Awards is that compromised that that's the case, personally. But yeah, It Takes Two. Well-received game, but not the game everybody thought was going to win Game of the Year. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it was strange, and I think, again, I don't think it was like, he paid to get the game. I have a lot of issues with the way the Game Awards were this year. I don't think it's that corrupt yet. I do think it reflects the year we had, where on top of people's semi-quarantine and people, new laws going back up, I think this was this game was designed for, you had to play with someone. For the whole game, you couldn't really do one thing. So I think it's probably more of the experience of you probably chose somebody you like to be around a lot, or at least to talk to a lot to get this game going. I think it just also shows that there was no definitive, where we looked at that Game Award list last episode and we were like, I don't know, we can kind of see everything going. My guess was everyone was, I thought for sure Metroid Dread or something like that was gonna win, or if that was even up for, I don't remember the exact list, but I didn't think it was going to be It Takes Two. I'm not mad at it. I understand it. I saw that and I was like, okay, that's interesting. I was like, I can't wait to go read Twitter because people are going to lose their mind. But, I do enjoy that game. I have not beaten it yet, but I do enjoy the game. It is a fun game. I think it's a creative game. I like it a whole lot better than, I believe it's Brothers and A Way Out.
Yeah.
That are designed very similarly. So I think it's my favorite out of that little group, so I wasn't mad at it, but it is an interesting one.
Yeah, and I felt very similarly, where it's like, I'm not mad at it, I am very surprised by it, but at the same time, like, he put in the work. Like Joseph Fares, he took a very specific game style and really kind of sought out to master it. And so to a certain extent, I am happy for him, because this is, again, not his first contribution to the Game Awards in terms of like having a game kind of up for some kind of announcement or nomination, and he finally was kind of able to do it. And I think this was, to be honest, like if he didn't win this year, I don't think any of the subsequent years with the slate that we know is coming up, I don't think he stands a chance, to be honest with you, in 2022. With what we know is coming out. So with like, the Horizons and stuff like that and God of Wars, this is a good time for him in a game like his. Again, and then the pandemic and just cooperative games in general, I think got kind of a new lease on life. But again, this is not his first foray into this. He put in the work with Brothers, he put in the work with A Way Out. And so I feel like he kind of struck gold with It Takes Two, and he finally kind of mastered that gameplay style that he had been trying so hard to master previously. So I'm happy for him. But yeah, at the same time, do I think, not that there's a corruption issue, but do I think there is a fact that this neutral award show is so linked to one man and his relationships? Do I think that is mildly problematic? Sure. But I think that's kind of a different subject for a different day. Because like it's like, imagine if there was like one dude who ran the Oscars, and his buddies just happened to be on stage all the time. Eventually, you'd be like, well, I mean, you know what I mean? So that's kind of a different subject where I feel like maybe the Game Awards at some point might need to detach themselves from the entity that is Jeff Keighley because of these relationships he has and the optics of being compromised. Not that it is, just the optics of that. But overall, I'm happy for It Takes Two. I think Joseph Fares, he put in the work, and shout out to his team. Next one, Best Game Direction, Deathloop. Interesting. I guess I'll just go really quick. Of the things that Deathloop won, I'm least upset about this one because in terms of game direction and the way that Deathloop was structured, I actually think it's pretty good in that regard. I think the other category that it won in, they're absolutely out of their minds for. But I think for this one, I'm not particularly upset with it. I'm not a Deathloop guy. You guys know that. But I'm not like pissed about it just because I do think the way that it was laid out and structured, I think, is I wouldn't say particularly innovative because it existed before, but I think they did a good job in terms of kind of just directing and making everything work and accounting for different outcomes and giving the player a very unique experience. But what's your feelings?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat where I'm like, well, for the Deathloop, I'm like, I get it. This one was a weird one because I think this was like, I'm looking at the list. It Takes Two, Returnal, Psychonauts 2, Ratchet and Clank, and Deathloop. I'm like, it makes sense
of those
that
choices,
Deathloop wins this. Of those choices, like you said, it tried to do something creative in the way it was laid out, the way its enemies is, the way you have the female antagonist hunting you. That all made sense. Again, I have not had the time to play Deathloop. I saw a lot, I read a lot. It feels like it doesn't jive. It's like $20 on Amazon. I might snag it, or I might just wait for Game Pass next year. I'm not sure. But I just kind of understood it, and I was like, I guess so. I was like, because of the way this game was shown and directed and laid out, I think it deserved it. I don't think it nailed it. I do believe, and not that I'm a Sony fanboy, but I do believe Returnal accomplished it better.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that would have been my vote, but I'm not upset that Deathloop won that.
Yeah, that's fair. Mm-hmm. Next, we got Best Narrative, and one that we kind of joked about, but it actually won Guardians of the Galaxy. Again, not mad at it. I liked the story. I'm just surprised, to be honest. But yeah, not upset with it. And I'm glad they could win something because a game, though obviously Marvel is not like a small thing. And who developed this? Was this Crystal Dynamics? I forget. I forget who developed it. Eidos, yeah. Eidos Montreal. Yeah, that team is not small. This is not their first kind of like rodeo over here. But at the same time, like, I want games like this to succeed and get their awards when they do something right. And for every Avengers, yeah, you do have the Guardians of the Galaxies that kind of hit it out of the park. And so I was glad that they were able to get something. So in that regard, do I think it's a little funny that like the best narrative went to Guardians of the Galaxy in 2021? Yeah, I think that's kind of funny. Yeah. But at the same time, like, yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, it's funny that I think we joked about it, and again, I can't personally speak out to what I for sure would have thought Life is Strange, True Colors would have won Best Narrative. I remember that being my bet. I still would make that bet. But I'm not mad at I'm in the same boat. I'm like, I'm glad they took something on. Because I didn't want this game to just kind of be wavering and no one talking about it. I'm glad they had a moment on stage. I'm glad a lot of people saw this. I'm glad that they were able to be really happy with it. And Best Narrative, it could go different ways, but I do think they nailed characters. I do think they nailed a story, though it took a little too long. It stayed its welcome a little too long, but I think the characters, they're interacting with each other. One of the things I always said from the beginning is they never shut up, and now that you beat the game, you know what I'm talking about. They never stop talking in Marvels. But I'm glad they won it. I'm glad that they at least have this, because Montreal's always been really solid with this. Especially when you're finally taking them away from the previous Deus Ex games, which were all choice based, and this spider webbing of stories doesn't always work out. So being able to tell a more restricted story worked out really well for them. So congrats to them. I mean, again, I love that game
for sure. We got Best Art Direction. They are bugging out for this one. But yeah, Deathloop won this one as well. But keep in mind, this was up against Kena, Psychonauts, Ratchet and Clank, and The Artful Escape. Obviously, I gave my projections last week that I felt that I would have personally, Psychonauts 2 or The Artful Escape, I think are like the 1 and 2. I also really loved Kena's art direction, but I wouldn't be, I was cool with them getting like Indie Game of the Year. So I feel like this was either Psychonauts 2's chance or The Artful Escape The Artful Escape's chance, and then for it to go to Deathloop is like insane to me. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, they're wild. I don't know what they thought or who chose this. Again, the two that I didn't want to win, Deathloop and Ratchet. I was like, the other three games, Kena, Psychonauts, or The Artful Escape, though I had not played The Artful Escape, I remember you told me a little bit, and I saw a lot about it, which obviously art direction is all about what you visualize. So I don't know what I thought was going to win. I don't remember what I guessed was going to win. But those three were going to be the ones. So the fact that it went to Deathloop, there's nothing, and this is not that I'm trying to come at Deathloop again, but that art style is the same art style that I saw in Dishonored 2, Dishonored spin-off, and the Dishonored 1. So it's like, what is... I don't know. They're nuts with that one. I think these other ones had a way better art direction. They think they looked better, they jived better, it all worked together better. But I guess that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and again, not to be a hater, not to be Mr. Conspiracy Man, Deathloop really does give me Industry Plant vibes. Like I feel like the powers that be in gaming are trying so hard to make Deathloop a thing, and like I don't know why, but it's weird.
Yeah.
Best score / music. This is a game neither of us have played, but both of us imagined would probably win as Nier Replicant because Nier Automata's music was so like unbelievable. So yeah, any thoughts there?
Again, the little I know of the Nier music, I think this is, again, I think we guessed this one, and I have put it on sometimes in the background while I'm doing other stuff, paying bills and stuff, and I get it. It does sound like stuff I like, and it's probably the best. Again, I don't know everything, but yeah, it sounds good, and I guess I approve of it if it matters.
I'll allow it.
Yeah.
We got Best Performance, Maggie Robertson from Resident Evil Village. I think absolutely fair, good choice. I wouldn't be mad if Giancarlo took it, but at the same time, Maggie, she did a phenomenal job in that role, and that I feel like was a really breakout cultural kind of shift moment for not only her but the game industry at large. So yeah, I think that was a great choice.
Yeah, she absolutely nailed this. I mean, I called it from a mile away. I said not only did she nail the performance, she also had the community behind her. People latched onto this character like no one expected. I don't know. I wonder if she even thought when she accepted this role. And like she said, I think she's fairly new into the industry, at least game performance and mocap wise, from my understanding. But yeah, I think she just really knocked it out of the park. And she seemed so genuine on stage. This is one of the only ones I went back to watch them accept the award, and she seemed so genuine on stage, where she was just like really into that character, into respecting Capcom and everybody. So congratulations to her. She did do a really good job. She became one of the most memorable parts of that whole game.
Yeah, most definitely. We got Best Indie Game, Kena Bridge of Spirits. That's what I was hoping for. I'm super happy about that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm glad Kena got it again. Whether I think if I remember discussing, I don't remember if I wanted to count Kena as a indie game, but I'm really happy that it did win it.
Yeah, I thought it was good enough to be contender for Game of the Year, period. But yes. I was like, if they can't get that, I'm happy with them getting Best Indie Game, and they did. That's good. Best Action Game, Returnal. Very excited about this one because I was just hoping that Returnal took something. Again, even though it's not necessarily my cup of tea, sometimes you know, real recognize real. You have to know when like somebody's doing something on a different level. I was like worried. I was like, Deathloop, I swear, better not win Best Action. And I liked Far Cry 6, but again, it's Far Cry. So it is kind of an established formula. So I feel like Returnal were the ones to really push the button there, and thankfully they took it.
Yeah, and you know, remembering, I think we obviously discussed it when I was playing it. I spent hours and hours on Returnal, and though I did not like the looping mechanic and the difficulty spikes, the gameplay is fantastic and the action is really great. So as much as I enjoyed Far Cry 6 mechanics, I was like, the action in Returnal just is so almost unique in style that I thought it had to win this.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
We got Best Action Adventure Game. This is where Metroid took it. I was like, Metroid better take something. Y'all already know I've gushed over Metroid enough, so I won't give you guys the whole rundown. But to me, as far as what I'm looking for, it's a near perfect game, and I was like, they need to win something. And so thankfully they gave him some credit for action adventure there, which I'm not mad at. I think I agree with that. So what are your thoughts?
I completely agree. Again, looking back at the list, Guardians of the Galaxy, Ratchet and Clank, Resident Evil, Psychonauts 2. I was like, Metroid did do its form. Metroid did its thing. Again, the style of Metroidvania is because of Metroid and obviously Castlevania. Yep. But it not only lived up to the name, but I do think it surpassed it. So really, it had to be this. I knew they had to win this one.
And then, for I think the second year in a row, most anticipated game goes to Elden Ring, coming out in February. Shout out to them. That's really, really awesome. I had a little bit of, not concerns, but a little skepticism that I was like, well, will it be able to still have most anticipated with the fact that it's coming out so soon, and we've actually seen a lot more since the last time, because anticipation certainly is people wanting to play it, but also like, how much do you know about it? How much have you seen? What's the mystery around it? And at this point, I felt like we know quite a bit about Elden Ring, so it's kind of around the corner. So I figured maybe one of the more mysterious games might edge it out a little bit. Like that from Bethesda and stuff like that. But I guess not. No, the Elden Ring fan base is kind of a different beast, and I'm really excited to see what people think about when that game comes out. So were you surprised by this at all?
Not too much. I think it's all just hitting. People have gone hands on with it. Some people were allowed to post. Some people weren't allowed to post some footage. And so I think it being the closest game, I think, to launch soon, it obviously gets people anticipated. Where God of War and Horizon, though they do look great, it's almost like people know what to expect from those games. Where Elden Ring has a sort of more mystery. I think if Nintendo was starting to push a little bit more for Breath of the Wild sequel, at least if given us a title, that game probably would have skyrocketed to the most anticipated list. But again, we have no idea if it's even launching in 2022. We don't know the name of the game. We don't know much else. And then Starfield, I think Starfield is unfortunately caught in this sort of battle of Bethesda. Now all Bethesda games going to be exclusive to Xbox. I think also we just have not seen enough of Starfield. I'm not excited for Starfield at all. And don't get me wrong, I will play it. I don't know what Starfield is, so how are you excited for something that is completely unknown to the most part? So it makes sense for Elden Ring, obviously, to get this again, especially being so close to its launch. Yeah.
Starfield's an interesting one because, obviously we have the Outer Worlds now, which is a sci-fi Fallout, and correct. That was the kind of question is how is Starfield's going to look now that exists? Now, obviously, the scale is going to be completely different, and by no means am I trying to equate the scale of them. The Obsidian made a way more kind of condensed, clean experience, which I loved. And what Starfield's going for is expansive. Also expansive, Starfield's way off. And I think to some degree it's worth noting the fact that there is going to be to some degree a contingent of like a hate mob against this game now that there is that exclusivity. And that's worth, mentioning the fact that that's going to happen. That didn't exist before that. At one point, anybody who said the name Starfield was somebody in the know about it that was super excited and positive about it, because those are the people who are paying attention. But now I think there's going to be a contingent of people who are going to really want this game to fail just because. Yep. And being completely honest with you, Sony fans don't take exclusivity not in their direction very well. Like, that's just facts. They just don't handle it very well. And so I'm really curious to see what the Xbox thing does to it, because yes, Xbox gamers I think can be very loyal. I mean, look what they've been able to keep Halo and Gears going for decades now. But at the same time, this is a new IP for them. So I'm really hoping that the Xbox fans hold it down for this game, because otherwise, they have a brand new IP from a very established publisher and developer, but at the same time with no real established rapport in this ecosystem in the same way. This is a very new Xbox contribution, you know what I mean? So I'm very curious to see what that game looks like, and if at all that exclusivity thing kind of sours the anticipation for it at all, because I could definitely see that happening. And then at the same time, Nintendo, it's just a matter of communications. When they're ready to fire the trigger and actually go for the promotional cycle, I think that's going to blast the first place in terms of promotion, because if there's anybody more as much or more vitriolic about their games next to Dark Souls-ish fans or Soulsborne fans, it's the Nintendo fans. So I think, that's just a matter of time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, an interesting Game Awards.
Did you watch it?
Rest it. I did not watch it, so I tuned in a few times throughout the evening. I was actually busy with some other stuff at the time. The only section I watched live were the 2 Sonic announcements.
Okay.
Strangely enough, I just happened when I clicked to link it. When I clicked the link, I just happened to click it both times. So it was fate. I saw the 2 Sonic announcements live.
Yeah, I didn't watch it. There was no way I was going to. To be honest with you, I think Game Awards is important for an announcement standpoint, but as a piece of entertainment, I personally, this is not a shot at Jeff Keighley, I think it's awful. Yes. Because I think it's a very antiquated formula in general. I think that I don't watch any award shows. I don't watch the VMAs, the Oscars, just AMAs, any of that. I'm just not into that stuff. I think that's very, very Gen X type stuff. I'm just not into that. And so the whole ad-ridden, 3-hour event with somebody speaking awkwardly on stage is just not really my cup of tea, personally. So I kind of watched on Twitter in terms of live tweeting of people just saying announcements. I have my Wario64 and Nibel, those 2 accounts. I go on there, I check the announcements. They have a thread usually of the major announcements. I watch the trailers as they come out. So yeah, I was on Sonic. I was on the Wonder Woman announcement and stuff like that. And so yeah, those type of things are very exciting. But there's no way I'm gonna watch it in real time. Just because, again, I watched it in the past, and it's just awful every time. But again, love Jeff Keighley. Shout out to him. I want him to keep doing the show. I just want nothing to do with it.
Yeah, big room for improvements. So, and hopefully that sort of seems to be the consent everyone agrees with. So we're hoping it gets.
I'm never getting invited to that for sure.
Smaller, tighter show.
Yeah, NeoVintage is probably not going to get invited to the Game Awards at any time soon, but
probably not. But hey, we're open to the idea.
Yeah, I think we'll be all right.
So moving on to the next story, a small one. It's sort of a continuing saga that's finally come to end. But Sony has announced a range of PS5 console covers in 5 different colors. These are official plates. As many remember, we had this whole thing with D-Brand, who made Sony plates. Then they got lawyers involved and stuff like that, and Sony was, copyrighting those 2 white panels. Well, obviously we knew that it's because they were officially making them. So these covers will replace the white plates on the current PlayStation 5 console, allowing you to reshade your console in red, purple, black, blue, or pink. As announced on the PlayStation blog, the covers will be available in the first half of 2022, starting with Midnight Black and Cosmic Red in January. Nova Pink, Galactic Purple, and Starlight Blue colors will arrive in the following months. 2 different versions obviously are available, one to fit the PS5 digital, one to fit the PS5 with disc drive. The console covers are available to pre-order through Sony Direct, priced at $54.99. Additionally, Nova Pink, Starlight Blue, and Galactic Purple DualSenses will be released in January 2022 to join the already released Cosmic Red and Midnight Black. So with each plate, there will be a corresponding control color, and obviously we already have those Cosmic Red and Midnight Black controls out, so you'll have plates to match that. So again, this was interesting. I'm glad Sony kind of finally just came out with this. I think it was a long time coming. I think this would have been a cooler thing to even release at launch, have people have the opportunity to customize their plates. I part of me didn't think it was actually going to happen due to the fact that Sony does like to release these exclusive style consoles. My PS4 Pro is the Spider-Man one. Obviously, if I could have just bought a plate and put it on top of my console, I would have loved to do that. So I'm not mad at this. I'm not really rushing out to go get one of these. $55. I mean, that's the price of a game. So do I really want to spend that much for something that's kind of hidden in my entertainment system as is? No. I do think for people who just really like it, it's out there. I think it's smarter to do the official Sony plates than the D-brand ones. We had our concerns over the D-brand plates. And I think it's also smart that these ones will perfectly match your DualSense. So what do you think of this quick announcement?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very positive about it. I think it was an inevitability, and everybody knew that this was eventually coming. The moment we knew that the faceplates were very easily removable, obviously that gives you access to the inside, so there are kind of like hardware design reasons why you do that. But at the same time, customizability, if there's an opportunity for them to kind of quickly turn around some new hardware for you to buy, you best believe they're going to do it, hardware peripherals at least. And so, yeah, that was an inevitability, and especially with the kind of back and forth with them and D-Brand, I knew that Sony, if they weren't thinking about it, were going to start thinking about dipping their toes into that. And so thankfully, here we go. It wasn't too far off. And yeah, I like it overall. I already pre-ordered the black ones personally.
Oh, cool.
Again, I was never particularly that fond of the white, to be honest with you. Like, I'm just not into it. I like the black console thing to match my other PlayStations. So the moment that I was going to have an easy means to be able to turn my console black, I was going to do that, and so they released the black. I was considering the other colors. I like the cosmic red. It's cute, but it's not really my thing. Like, I love me some pink. That Nova pink is ugly as hell to me. I'm just saying.
It's weird.
Like, that's a ugly pink to me. Galactic purple is and then I'm not mad at the starlight blue. Those colors, the galaxy thing is just not really clicking with me. Unless I had a matching DualShock, I could see kind of that, or DualSense, I could see that kind of syncing up well. But for me personally, I'm just going to do the black console. I want to see that all black, the matte black with the blue glowing interior. I think that's going to look amazing, personally. So that's what I was kind of feeling for it. I always want, and I want a black DualSense too, to be honest with you. Because the white thing makes me paranoid. They're going to get stained over time. But yeah, I already pre-ordered mine, and I don't think 55, like... Yeah, if you think about it, like if I go super literal and I'm like, yes, they are just plates on the outside of my console, just chunks of plastic with some engravings. Is 55 a little steep for that? I suppose. But at the same time, to make my console look exactly the way I want it to look from the actual, like, this is not D-Brand. This is actually from Sony, so I know it's going to work. It's going to be high quality. I'm not mad at that, actually. I think it could have been a lot worse, all things considered. Like, if these plates were, like, released by Apple, you best believe they would have been, like, 150, 200 bucks. So the fact that it was 55, I'm not mad at that. And they had ample stock of what it seemed like, because I went on their website, and they were all there. So, yeah, no, I'm happy with it overall.
Yeah, same, actually. And, and they're reusable. Again, I will eventually probably get a plate and change it.
What color are you thinking?
I do like that red. I think it's gonna
like
matter
your DS.
more. It it matches my original, I think 3DS XL or whatever called it, new 3DS. So it'd be nice. I kind of do like it, almost more maroon. I do think it's gonna rely mainly on which DualSense I get first, and then I'll want to get one to match that. Yeah. Which I see in the local stores by me. Not that I go to them often, but I do see the black there a lot, and I really do like that black DualSense. So I may just do that because I do want to get a different entertainment system and not hide the consoles because I need them to breathe, but sort of just hide in plain sight sort of deal.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, if there's only one color that I hope that they would eventually do that I would also switch to would be, do you remember when the anniversary PS4 came out with the ash gray from the PlayStation 1? Mm-hmm. That color. If they do like the PlayStation 1 gray again, where it's almost got like that ever so slight green tint to it, like it's really cool. That is the only color I think that I'd probably switch from black to. I would love that. I hope they do something like that. But and that's a cool thing about these plates is you don't have to buy a whole new console to have a new console look. And that's kind of the benefit of like the Switch, for example, is the body stays the same. But if you buy different types of Joy-Cons, you suddenly have like a completely different looking console. And unfortunately with the PlayStation 4, it wasn't really modular in any way. So like if you want a fancy looking the Destiny PS4 or something like that, you need to buy a new PS4 pretty much. Which was annoying. With this one, they can do all different types of themed plates. They got Kratos plates if they want, and then you just buy the plates for $55, throw them on. Maybe they sell them for more because they're themed or whatever. You throw them on, and now you have a brand new console, basically the way it looks, and that I think is really, really awesome.
Yeah, it's an interesting sport. So we'll see, because now they can just constantly just release new colors to correspond with their DualSenses.
Yeah,
so
much quicker. They don't have to
They don't have to
make new hardware. Yeah,
exactly. All right, so going to the next story.
Doubled you up.
Yeah, of course, because I had to get this one.
Exactly.
So at the Game Awards, Sega officially revealed the next big Sonic game, Sonic Frontiers. We saw this back during the Sega Sonic anniversary stream they did. We saw a very quick glimpse of Sonic running through like the forest. So it's which will be boasted as the series' first open zone inspired gameplay. Sonic Frontiers is being developed by Sega Sonic Team Japan and led by producer Sachiko Kawamura and directed by Mario Kishimoto. Sonic Frontiers promises a new type of Sonic experience where players will be free to explore an open world. Sonic Frontiers is a huge leap forward for the franchise, delivering an enveloped gameplay experience that can be enjoyed by longtime Sonic fans and action adventure enthusiasts alike, unquote, says Sonic Team USA creative officer Takahashi Iizuka. Quote, we've created an all-new style of gameplay experience for Sonic the Hedgehog where players will be able to explore lush and expansive landscape with Sonic's signature speed and abilities. So, obviously, a pretty interesting trailer. A little jarring at first, I'll give it to this. Though I'm Sonic's like biggest fan, I'm also the biggest critic of Sonic games. Yeah. Because it comes hand in hand. And at first, I was very jarred by its look. It almost looked like these, YouTube Unreal Engine 4 Sonic mods. In a sense, it did look a little weird. It looked like almost realistic with Sonic running around, which has always been awkward for me. But watching the trailer afterwards and hearing some of the stuff that they've discussed, hearing some, there's one guy who did leak the name Sonic Frontiers a while ago. The project name was Rangers that we saw a long, long time ago. And we've seen a little bit more of discussing what it's going to kind of be, where, everyone knows the Sonic race car style game, which we saw in Unleashed and Generations. Apparently, there's still going to be clips of that in the game. I'm not going to go too far into it because a lot of the stuff seems pretty credible, so I want it to be sort of surprising for people. And I kind of want to be surprised by it too, but I'm all open for Sonic Frontiers. I'm open for new styles of Sonic. My only issue is Sonic has technically, his games technically have not always been the greatest. And the beginning of that trailer chugs a little, man. It chugs a little, and I kind of like took a quick sigh. I'm like, why is it chugging? Why, guys? Don't show it this way. I think it'll be fine once it releases. But again, look at the way Sonic Colors, Ultimate Edition or whatever they called it, did release kind of rough, and obviously infamously Sonic 06. I don't think it'll be anywhere on that. I'm worried about this. I'm glad it's coming to everything. Let me give everyone a warning now. Don't buy this on Switch. I saw the Switch logo. You are out of your mind if you guys think the Switch version is gonna run well. They couldn't get a Wii U game ported correctly. So let's temper our expectations. I'd love to be wrong because I'd love to have this game on the go, but guys, don't buy this on Switch. So what did you think, Sonic Frontiers?
Yeah, I'm so first off, I kind of like what I see. I always get excited for a new Sonic game just because I feel like you and I both hold out for that Sonic game, that one day they're going to knock it out of the park. They're going to hit us with that 3D Sonic game that we've been waiting for. Obviously, I'm like Adventure 3, like basically Adventure 3 experience. Even though I know technically, if you want to be objective about it, 06 is kind of Sonic Adventure 3, but let's not talk about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's like, I have kind of an eye of skepticism on it because the reality is they're like, okay, open world, we have an open zone inspired gameplay, you can kind of explore and stuff like that. And it's like, I think during the PS2 era, that was a very enticing thing. Like, oh my god, an open world. But like in 2021, it's like, okay. Now in 2021, the question is like, okay, but what are you going to do with it? So it's like, okay, you can put Sonic in an open world, which is, okay, cool, awesome. Have him be able to explore. Like, are there going to be collectibles? Is there going to be any kind of incentive to explore this world? Are you going to do it well? Because we've seen examples of open worlds done masterfully, and then we've seen open worlds that didn't need to be that open, to be honest with you. So, I'm kind of mixed on it, where it's like, I hope they take advantage of this kind of leap in scale that they're going for. But at the same time, like when it is Sonic, unfortunately, you have to kind of keep that kind of air of temper your expectations a little bit and just see what they actually deliver, because at the same time, sometimes they with what the way they describe things, they kind of tend to overpromise sometimes with Sonic, and then you get it and you're like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing here. But overall, I think this game does have a lot of potential. it's been a while since Forces, and so they've had a lot of time to kind of incubate and take in feedback and try something new. They have brand new hardware that they can really push, and hopefully they take advantage of. And one thing that I've always found about Sonic that unfortunately it doesn't seem like the teams take advantage of so much as like the modding community is that Sonic with really strong hardware, specifically on PC, that kind of blast processing is so fun and impressive. And I really would love to see them out the gate come out with that kind of experience. So like imagine what you see with like Unleashed or Generations, that level of like high fidelity 3D experience, but out of the gate on a console. I think that would be really awesome, so we don't have to wait to the PC version to do that, you know what I mean? To be able to see that on PS5. And yeah, I'm just curious to see what that gameplay looks like. The way they're describing it sounds like something new. So, what does 3D Sonic but new feel like, you know what I mean? Like that Forces or Sonic Adventure or even all the other kind of B tier ones hasn't done yet. I'm curious about. So I'm like cautiously optimistic about it. I think that whatever they deliver will likely be very fun. I just hope that they don't try to bite off more than they can chew, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely, and that's always the big thing with Sonic games, where they try to do what other people are doing. And I know a lot of everyone's calling this Breath of the Wild did not create the open world aspect, so I'm not sure why that's just because it shows a green field, people think it's Breath of the Wild.
Yeah,
I just want to know what that. Yeah, and they did the same thing for Kirby. So I'm curious on what this all really looks like altogether. I know we saw some enemy design, but we didn't see like moment to moment gameplay, which is always the big thing for me. I want that gameplay trailer. What am I doing for minutes, hours at a time, and that's what's always important with these Sonic games, because sometimes they'll have an okay story, but it's not carried by the gameplay. Sometimes they got some solid gameplay, but there's a dumb child story. We got to see what this lands, because I know they're trying to hit a lot of things, so they either will be successful at that, or they will unfortunately fail at many things, and that's what the games sometimes are more infamously known for, on how terrible they are, which I hope this is not what they do. I hope they really push for that. This is a really good game, and people talk about it, because unfortunately when a solid Sonic game comes out, because it doesn't have a lot of meme potential, people ignore it, so I hope it's not that again.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about Sonic is I feel like Sonic is at its best when it's being unapologetically itself. When I think about some of the best Sonic games I think of, there's not a quick analog that can be like, oh, this reminds me of A, B, and C. It's just not. Sonic is Sonic. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, a lot of people tied these two franchises together, but like Sonic is not and never will be Mario. And I'm not saying that, I'm not saying as good as, I'm saying they're not the same thing, and they're not trying to do the same thing. And unfortunately, they got linked up. And so sometimes when I'm seeing these open fields and exploration and stuff like that, and it's giving, some people say Zelda vibes, some people say that, obviously like Odyssey pushed a lot of games, that platformers, to want to go more open. It makes me apprehensive, because I'm like, I want Sonic to be the best Sonic it can be. And Sonic trips up when they try to be something else. When they took Sonic from this amazing side-scrolling blast processing, it's like, okay, we want to go more 3D, and that's awesome. Obviously, from that kind of Mario 64 influence, that just completely shook up the game industry, and that did cause issues. Eventually, I feel like they got their traction, but to act like Sonic Adventure was like a smooth, seamless experience, it wasn't. No. And so I want Sonic to be unapologetically themselves, and I just get a little apprehensive sometimes where they're using these terms and there's these visuals that evoke a kind of spirit of a different franchise, where it's like, I don't see how you can do a really well. What makes Sonic great, I feel like a lot of times, is that incredible level and art design. And like, how do you do amazing level design in terms of movement and that kinetic action when you have like an open field? You know what I mean? That's my question. And that's for them to figure out. So I'm not saying they're gonna flop on it. I'm just saying they have a lot to consider. But all things considered, even if it's not the greatest thing in the world, it wouldn't. And I mean this in a nice way, it would not be the first time they're in that position. They'll figure it out. Yeah, it's fine. Exactly. But I have my fingers crossed, because I think they've had enough time to figure out something well that it's probably not going to be a stinker. It might be my famous last words. We'll see. But I'm feeling good about it. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what comes of it, and to learn more. 100%.
All right, so now to the big topic of the show, the thing that we've been waiting for weeks now that I've been excited to finally do. It's the NeoVintage Game Awards, where we're going to be giving over our top fives and what we think are the game of the year and our notable mentions. And we have our Stinker of the Year award, of course. And then we're going to do some recommendations at the end, too. So we have a lot planned. This is going to be really, really exciting. So basically, the way we're going to structure this is we'll do it section by section. We'll start with our top 5 of the year, all leading up to our game of the year. And so, Steve, would you like to go first?
Okay, yeah. I'll start there. So, obviously, number 5 being my lowest, then we'll work our way up.
Exactly.
For top games of the year. Number 5, I had to give it to Halo Infinite.
Nice.
know, I knew Halo was. I didn't think it would land on my game of the year list, and it's hard when I was looking at all the games what I've played. I have to exclude the games that didn't release this year that I got to. But Halo Infinite, not only it was halfway there, obviously, with its foot in the door with the multiplayer, with the hours I spent on it, the hours I spent playing the flights that they were giving out at the time, and now accompanied with this really solid open world campaign, though I have some issues with it, and some of these issues may be resolved later. I don't know when I get to that whole package. That's why I couldn't put it all the way up on my list, because I don't know what it all completely looks like. But the biggest part of a game is the gameplay, and that's something that I think most people are just like, Halo knocked it out of the park. I mean, it's so fun to play. It's so great to play. Sure, there's issues with progression and multiplayer, like we keep talking about, and sure, it has its issues. But nothing that it's like crippling my experience per se. The biggest part, like I said, of the game is its gameplay. What is it doing moment to moment? And that's just knocking it out of the park. I've loved this series ever since I had my first original Xbox on a Christmas day. And the fact that here I am all these years later, enjoying it again, like it's I'm in such a different state of mind. I'm not sharing a bedroom with 2 other brothers.
Yeah.
And the fact that I'm still excited to play this, where I will even suck it up and xCloud it to while I'm at work. Luckily I can just VPN my work's Wi-Fi, so I can stream it pretty solidly. Just to get a couple, bases taken over, or jump into a multiplayer match to get a few checkpoints, a few checklist achievements over. And it's just like the game I'm constantly wanting to talk about. I'm not a person who watches. I watch people streaming, not just randomly, but to watch specific people stream this game multiplayer. I watch Chris Reagan stream this because he knows Halo like no one knows Halo, and I'm just watching him play and just experience it all again is just really, really great for me. So that's why I had to give it a spot on my list, and it just edged out some other games. So I had to give it in my number 5 spot. So going right up to number 4, something that I think people keep forgetting, and I do think it got snubbed a little bit because of when it's released. Hitman 3. I think this game is being completely overlooked because of how early in the year. I think, was it February or something like that? That
January 20th.
January. Oh, oof. But I think Hitman, very, very early. Wow. And I do think it's hurting it because when this game came out, I know it's just not a lot was out at the time. People were talking about this game like crazy and how great it was, and this culminative of this trilogy that we've had, and the fact that this game worked so well, literally pulling the levels from the first 2 games, and this package deal. There's a murder mystery level. I know a lot of people talk about it that goes completely off the rails if you play the part of the detective. Sure, you can go in, assassinate who you want to assassinate, and be out, but play the part of the detective and you keep following this story. It just invokes so much special. Like, there's a movie I really like, Knives Out, that it just invokes a lot of those elements that it's just really well done. And I think overall this game is just so solid in a world where I'm very picky on my stealth games and when or if I even want to play them. And this took it to another level. It took it to some of these such memorable moments in areas, like that weird club in I think Germany or wherever it is.
Berlin,
Berlin. Come on, that is so cool. And the amount of care with these levels and the side stories, and I've been dying to. I just reinstalled it on my PS5 because I know they did the whole 7 Deadly Sins expansion, and now they just came out with saying they're releasing some stages, actually some new maps, and I want to support them. And I kind of thought, the game's been quiet for so long that I didn't think they would be releasing. I know they're working on a James Bond game, if I'm not wrong, right? A 007 game I think they're working on next.
Yes, the team, yeah.
The team. So I thought that maybe this was it. But gladly it's there, and such props. And I had to put it on my list just because it was such a great experience for me. I just remember being, on a winter day, just bundled up, just doing these missions and trying different possibilities, and just what a game that takes itself super serious and at the same time it lets you throw fish at people, and it's just like a wild, dumb, nonsensical fun. But it really just knocked out something where I didn't expect I'd see this year, especially playing Hitman 1 and 2. I was wondering what new it could do, and it did past my expectations. So really shout out to them, and I'm really excited to get back into Hitman 3. Number 3, and this is a game that, again, I can't give it my top, but I had to make mention of it at least. And as I kept talking about it and as I kept discussing it, it just rose up in the ranks just because of how many different games were there. It Takes Two. I had to put It Takes Two on my list. Now, a lot of these other games, I have in my notable mentions, are really solid, and I played more than I played It Takes Two, but when I look at the game of the year, I feel of like, what did the game make me feel? What did I have to do to play the game? The experience of it, and the fact that the story is not like the greatest. I cannot stand the book of love or whatever that character is. Can't stand it. Absolutely roll my eyes every time that thing comes up. But playing this with my wife, just the different co-op aspects of it brings me back to the times when I used to play a lot of split screen games. And me being the middle child, I was stuck always playing split screen games with people. And the fact that it rejuvenated this sort of experience of it, where and now that I look at games a little bit more different on what it takes to develop them and what it is to write out these stages and plan these stages out to work at the same time, I just had to just really enjoy it. It's a game where it's like, what, I really, really did like this game, and everything about it. I was never bored of it. Fighting, there's early on you fight these bees, and it's like this weird robot, and it's just so much of this nonsensical fun that it just threw back to a time where these other games were so heavy at times, where I've like focusing on story, where this game not only has a fun story to get through, but the gameplay is what really shone out, and that's always what I go to the video games for, is these experiences and always these gameplays. So I didn't think it'd hit my list. I knew it'd be my top 10, but I didn't think it'd hit my top 5. But the more I discussed it, I have to give it to him. It Takes Two is such a really solid game, and I'm really glad I was able to experience it. Now, number 2 is not really a shocker for anyone who knows me. Obviously, I'm a huge Capcom fanboy, so Resident Evil Village, I had to give it a spot. This game, it fluctuated on my list, where I would get really, really high on it, and at one point it was my number 1 game of the year. But it varied due to a couple slogging sections of it. I'm not going to go too far into, because we discussed this when the game came out, when I was playing it, when you played it and watched someone play it. Everything about Village really spoke to me. The connections to Resident Evil 4, the connections to the series in general, and the new starting point it's kind of leaving us at. It was just really cool. I just think that Resident Evil in first person does something really special that every couple years when we get one, it just really stands out. Sure, the game's length was a little wonky, and there's a lot of little issues of it, but when this game came out, it overtook everything I was doing, and it overtook everyone. I mean, it was on Twitch, people were loving this game and exploring it and all these different things, and I'm curious to see some DLC. It's been a long time since they've talked about it. It worries me, because I know also that although I didn't want to play that hoggish podge of multiplayer they wanted to add to it, that just is in development hell, so we'll never know what happens with that. But
yeah, that's still not out, right?
No, it got delayed and then just disappeared.
That's crazy.
Also, no thanks. I don't want to play that. Just give me the Lady D DLC that you're gonna do. You have to assume that's what they're gonna do. So then comes to my number 1 game, which is I fought with this, and I looked at everything as a whole. What game did I? It was a hard year, because the games were so weird this year. So much of the stuff that I knew would take my number 1 spot got laid, pushed into the next year. So when I look at what game did I enjoy almost completely, which game did I have the least complaints about, which game did I love coming back to playing, and I'm dying to get to the point where like this is the game I recommend. Again, a lot of them landed on my notable mentions list just because we had to knock it down. But I had to give it to him. So Guardians of the Galaxy, I couldn't avoid giving it my top. A huge Marvel fan, obviously. We both are in the comic scene, in the MCU versions. I'm starting to read a lot of these older galactic era Marvel, which is something that we're just starting to tap into in the MCU. But Guardians of the Galaxy went full-fledged on with some of these characters. And not to spoil too much, but certain characters that have not been seen yet, have been hinted at in the MCU, that we see in Guardians of the Galaxy, and this is a cast of characters that I really enjoyed the two movies, and to have the characters done in such a different way, but also in a respectful way, where you can see what similarities they have and what differences they have, on top of having a really solid story, though it was not the craziest out of the blue story. It was just really fun to kept me guessing what was happening. You see early on where it kind of goes and who is who, but I just couldn't stop enjoying it. I enjoyed the game the whole way. I had laughs. My biggest complaint is they said the word flark too much.
Oh yeah.
My goodness. But if that's my biggest complaint of the game, it's obvious, and I struggle again. My list shifted a lot. But the fact that I enjoyed most of this game, where I enjoyed all of Resident Evil, but there's two sections. Obviously, the guy with the hat, I don't remember his name, Heisenberg or whatever his name was. I really didn't like his story, the factory section. So that's a whole chunk of the game that I didn't enjoy. Where Guardians, though, I do agree with you. I played it on PS5. Something happens those last couple of chapters where the game just is not polished.
Yeah.
Chugging, clipping. I don't know what happened in those last couple chapters. I guess they really wanted this game out a little sooner before the end of the year. But I have to give it to it. So complete props to them. And I didn't think so. I didn't think Guardians would be anywhere near my top 5, but it was such a refreshing journey after being tainted so bad after Avengers and everything like that. So those are my top 5 games of the year. I recommend those games to people. Some of the stuff's on Game Pass, so you don't have to drop money. These games have been pretty cheap ever since. I was able to tell some people to get Guardians for $25 during Black Friday, which is a steal at that
sure.
price. A steal at that price. So those were my top 5 games of the year. So I'm excited to hear your list because we've played very different games this year.
Yeah, different, and then there's also a lot of overlap because our top 5 is not profoundly different, but it is different. So yeah, I'll start with the number 5 spot, and this spot was a war, man. I cycled through, I think, 4 different games for this spot because they were just bumping each other, and I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do. But I settled on number 5 being Halo Infinite. I didn't think Halo was going to crack my top 5, to be honest with you, but when I first started crafting this list, but then I actually just spent some more time with the game, and is it a perfect game? Of course not. Is there issues with it? Sure. And if I was super deep into the metagame, I'm sure I'd probably have more critiques of it. But just speaking from almost a campaign standpoint, I think there is something to be said for doing what you do at a really high level and managing to do it so deep into the life cycle of a franchise and being able to find a way to reinvent, but at the same time stay faithful and do that all really, really well. And I just had to give them credit that, I'm playing Halo, and with all the issues that this game experienced in its development cycle, for it to be as smooth of an experience as it is, and sure, can you really pay close attention and read between the lines and find the points where it was probably trimmed? Sure. But I think overall what they develop, I'm liking the story so far. It looks beautiful. It performs well. The gameplay is great. I love the hook shot. I love the navigation overall. And I think they successfully did something that many, many franchises are not able to do, which is take an older franchises from multiple generations in the past and make an iteration that in 2021 feels just as great as any of the other first-person shooters that you have, but also somehow connects very intimately to the version that we experienced, almost 20 years ago at this point. And I think that is a really incredible thing that they were able to do with Halo Infinite, all things considered. Is it a shame that it took so long for it to come and that it missed the launch cycle? Sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think there's something to be said for doing what you do at a really high level and being able to compete when all things considered, franchises like this would have been died off a long time ago. And I got to give credit to 343, man. They were fighting an uphill battle for a really, really long time to be able to really kind of become that developer that does Halo well. Everybody always, for the longest time, compared them to Bungie, and just to kind of be able, and of course, I don't think they're ever going to be able to purge that to be like, no, 343 is better than Bungie at Halo. No, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that I think they have kind of stepped into their own a lot more, and I can feel very confidently in saying that, like, Halo is in good hands with 343. Very confidently saying that. And that's a great position to be in, because once upon a time, a lot of people wouldn't have said that. And so, yeah, that's my number 5 spot. Got to give it to them. Number 4, had to give it to Far Cry 6. Now, this one was kind of a controversial one for me because, again, it is an established formula. Are they reinventing the wheel here? No. But I think at the end of the day, you need to give credit to, like, fun. Just having a ton of fun with something. And if it just works, it works. And that was Far Cry for me. It's like, was I blown away by the story? No, of course not. Or the vocal performances? No. The gameplay? No. But, like, I had a ton of fun with it from front to back. Like, I had a good time with it. At no point did I feel like it lulled. It does what it does, and it does it well. And I liked what they were able to do with the better hardware. It plays really great. I love Yada overall as just a area. It felt like old Far Cry meets new Far Cry. And yeah, I think overall it was just a great, and I think personally, Presidente Castillo was one of the best antagonists that they've given to us personally. And I liked him because he had this kind of like composed yet unhinged air about him that I loved so much. And there was actually moments where he's giving interviews where you're sitting there and you're like, man, he's kind of spitting facts, even though he's doing heinous things, which is really interesting to kind of see that nuance, because that's real life sometimes, where like you'll hear really messed up people make really good points. And that's a really interesting thing where it's like, sometimes with the older antagonist, where it's like Pagan Min and the father and stuff like that, these were very compelling antagonists that I feel like lived in a kind of different realm of existence. You know what I mean? Like the father, this cult leader, unless you exist in one of those religious systems that have a lot of analogs to that, which a lot of people do, and in many ways people with like religious trauma, I think, can really connect with some of the themes that they play around with in Far Cry 5. So I'm not minimizing that, because I did connect with it in that way. But at the same time, these are very kind of like fantastical representations of people that possibly either have exist or could exist. Where like Castillo, there's multiple figures that you can point to that are like direct analogs to this individual, where it's like, yeah, it's complicated, you know what I mean? Like they do good things, they do bad things, they do a lot of bad things, but like how do you juggle that and weigh that, and what does it look like when you actually throw that person out of power but don't have the systems in place to keep that stability that he did? At the end of the day, Yada was to some degree prosperous under his rule. How do you juxtapose that with some of the reality and material conditions of some of the people who suffer under his rule? It's a complex issue. And that's what I like about Far Cry sometimes, where like some people critique Far Cry for not really going there. And I actually disagree with that point, that I do think they go there. I just don't think they write it on paper for you and throw it into your face. You know what I mean? Like, I think if you take the time to understand what they're trying to do and understand the world and hear what the characters are saying and actually dive headfirst into the narrative, I think there is a lot of interesting commentary there. Not only about particular economic and political institutions, but overall kind of, interventionism and the U.S.'s role in that kind of stuff. There's lots of interesting narratives going on in Far Cry that I don't think people give enough credit to. A lot of people think, checklist, you go to this place and you switch the flag and you kill this guy and you do that 30 times and you beat the game. Yes, I think on a very kind of surface level gameplay loop, I think that's the case. But at the same time, I think that there is a gameplay formula that works, and they play with some narrative themes that are nuanced and complex, like real life can be at some point, that I think are worth commendation personally. So that's my number 4 spot. My number 3, you actually mentioned already, Hitman 3. At one point, my game of the year, and it had slipped just because other games had come out. it came in so early, so it was kind of fighting an uphill battle for that one. But yeah, no, Hitman, can't go wrong with some Hitman, man. IO hit it out of the park with Hitman 1, to be honest with you. 2 just reinforced that. And then 3, I think, just hammered it home. And the great thing about 3 is that integration with the first 2 games. They all work so seamlessly that you can download all those maps and have one launch hub. So Hitman really is kind of a unified experience right now. So not only am I talking about how good Hitman 3 is, but overall the trilogy as a whole, kind of just all united through 3, I think is just so phenomenal. It's a beautiful looking game. Got to give them credit on the visual front first and foremost. And then on top of that, the complexity of the maps of 3, I think, is very unique. And that's something I think that they really... They established in 1, they, I think, really gave it depth in 2, and then they took it to a whole nother level in 3, especially in that map in China. The sheer amount of different storylines you can do, completely unrelated, actually, to the main assassination targets that you have in there, where you can get different access keys to certain things and outfits and stuff like that. And sometimes it's as simple as just being patient, listening out to some conversations, following somebody and getting their clothes or their access key or something like that. It's just such a creatively well-designed game, and it almost has a level of design and consideration that you don't see with a lot of modern games, actually. That is something that gives me a lot of 90s vibes of they accounted for every little thing, that if you're in this spot at this little time, you get this conversational prompt, and it's just so interesting that it gives me a lot of old school Nintendo vibes and stuff like that, where they accounted for all those little things. And you gotta love a game that comes out, gives you what you want, and then it's not something they have to patch a million times and fix after the fact. It worked off rip, and I love the maps, and I'm super excited for 2022 with the new maps, because as you said, the 7 Deadly Sins DLC, that expanded on existing maps. They added new targets to all the existing maps. I'm super excited to be able to dive into some new stuff. And the cool thing was, also the narrative also came to a hold, and they did some really interesting things, connecting not only, and not to get into spoiler territory, they didn't connect 3 into previous games, they connected 3 into the first game, the very first Hitman game, which is incredible. And it literally puts it on loop, so that's really incredible what they were able to do from a narrative perspective there as well. So shout out to Hitman 3, brilliant game. Number 2, Kena Bridge of Spirits. You guys know how much I love this game. Would have been my number 1, but got edged out ever so slightly by another game. And yeah, I love this game on all fronts. Looks beautiful, plays beautiful. I love the story of it. I love the length of time. They didn't overstay their welcome. They gave you a nice 10 to 15 hour experience, and then you move on. And I just love the combat. I love how unique and kinetic the action can be, and where they introduce you to all these new mechanics that they make good use of. That's another thing, is sometimes they'll give you these cool mechanics in games that they don't give you really creative ways to use, or they'll use it for one specific situation, where in here I feel like Kena does the thing where they give you a new ability and they have you use it in traditional ways, and then they really kind of make you rack your brain a little bit and use it in ways that you didn't expect to have to use it. And I think that just is a masterclass on game design. So I believe it's Ember Lab, the team that did this, so I just want to give them endless credit. Shout out to you guys knocked it out of the park. I feel like maybe this game got shafted a little bit. I feel like that people kind of chalk it up to the little indie game thing, but personally I think this game stands up with all the Juggernaut AAA experiences of the year personally, and I think this deserves to be in that conversation. And then lastly, for me, Metroid Dread. This is no surprise. You guys know how much I like this game. And I'm to disclose beforehand, I am very kind of biased to that game type to begin with. Y'all know Castlevania is my favorite franchise to begin with. Then, Metroid's kind of a close second for me. And yeah, it did everything I needed to do. When Metroid Dread was announced, my concerns were, one, first off, it has stiff competition. This is a franchise with some of the best games in its field period. You got Super Metroid. The original Metroid is what it is. It's revolutionary, but at the same time of masterclass games. You got Super Metroid, Zero Mission, and Fusion. Not to mention the worst one of the franchise, Metroid 2, was redone in Samus Returns, which was also a banger. So pretty much everything in this franchise of the 4 games previously were just incredible games. And so when they're going back to the 2D world, I'm like, okay, you got to do this right. And there's a certain level of depth and care that they need to do this. So not only does it need to play right, it needs to be creatively designed. It needs to look good, because you guys are not doing the pixel art anymore. So don't be careful with these 3D assets. Don't make it look too clunky. Don't make it look like Bloodstained. You know what I mean? Shout out to Bloodstained. I love Bloodstained. I don't mean to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like, and like make it run good, because again, like the Switch at this point, Switch has been out for 4 years at this point, and games are really pushing this hardware. But this is Sony first party, so we expect a certain level of quality. And personally, I think they actually absolutely knocked it out of the park on every front. I think it looks good, plays good, very creatively designed. I think it does great things to Samus's story. I won't get too deep into that because not everybody's finished it, but I think it connects all these games in such a brilliant way, and it has immense replayability. That's another great thing about it is with Metroidvanias, you hope that once you beat it, there is kind of a incentive to go back. And I think they have brilliant incentives to go back and actually continue playing this game on hard mode, which I have done. And I think it gives a great amount of challenge that's not unfair, but that pushes you to pay attention. That's the great thing is, and I think that's the great things about games like Metroid, like a Bloodborne, where it's like I hate nothing more in gaming than cheap deaths, where like it's difficult for difficult sake. But there's something to be said that like when you die in Metroid, a lot of times it's like, oh, I see what I did wrong there. I need to just figure this out. I need to figure this boss out, and I think that's an awesome thing to kind of just sit down and like, let me figure this out. And am I trying to do that with every video game? Hell no. But for Metroid, I think it's just such a great feeling to do it, and I think the game just plays great. I love the abilities that not only did they introduce, but that they brought back. I love the parry system that they took from Samus Returns and kind of reintegrated it into the franchise here. So yeah, Metroid Dread I think is phenomenal. I'm so glad that 2D Metroids are even being made in 2021, because I'm glad they did Samus Returns, but I was skeptical about whether they'd really honestly return to it in a large way. Like, I wouldn't have been surprised if at any point they decided to do like a Super Metroid quick, like, small remake or cleanup or something like that. But for them to do a brand new 2D Metroid game, I think is really, really awesome. And it gives me so much hope for all these other franchises that I feel like have been a little bit more dormant. And yeah, so that's my game of the year, Metroid Dread.
Awesome. That's good to hear, and that's a solid list. Obviously, it's a completely, yeah. Obviously, I know you, so I understand your list. But even if I didn't, that's a completely understandable list. Yeah,
nothing too controversial, I think, in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to our notable mentions section. Now, to give you guys kind of a little background on what this is, these are games either that didn't make it into our top 5, maybe they get edged out a little bit, or they didn't qualify by the standards that we established. And what I mean by that is sometimes games will have like PS5 ports or DLC drops. So it's not a new game. It's like expanding on the existing game via DLC or a new port or something like that. And so for the sake of not clogging up our top 5 up with like older games, you know what I mean, or collections and stuff like that, that's why we wanted to create this notable mentions section. So Steve, you want to go and name your notable mentions?
Yeah, so I combined 2 into 1, and I just kind of named it PS5 ports.
Sure.
Mainly talking about the Ghost of Tsushima director's cut, also Death Stranding director's cut. Mainly because we've talked about these games a ton already. They're a couple years old, but though they aren't unnecessarily new games, the new ports are the best way to experience these games. Ghost of Tsushima, which was already, I think that was my game of the year that year. Is even better now. It's even better running at its new fidelity, and obviously the new DLC with the Ireland DLC. And the same with Death Stranding, which is a game that many people were waiting for to fail, were waiting to hate on, and for most people it surpassed their expectations. And I did play a good chunk of it. I haven't completed it a second time because that game. Well, we all know that. We all know what it takes to beat that game. It's a lot of time, but to experience it all again is really fantastic. So I had to just mention those real quick, those PS5 ports. But the 3 quick other games, Far Cry 6 obviously just missed my top 5 list for all the same reasons you've said. I just think this is it was just a chopping block game. This game could easily have been in my top list, easily in my top 10 for sure, but in my top 5, the game just It's just the other games did one little extra thing, and really, if Halo Infinite didn't come out, this wouldn't have been in my top 5 for sure. But we're not gonna, we've praised this game a lot. I have a lot of the same feelings for you to the game that you have. So really excited to say that. One quick one I need to mention, just because I did play a lot of it, and it's just that moment, that dumb fun nonsense. Riders Republic is just, I don't know what it is with this game, but I enjoy playing it. I enjoy flying down a mountain on a bike. I enjoy doing the parachuting, the squirrel suit, the jetpack, the snowboarding. I've always been really into the snowboarding games. So the fact that I can have that all rolled up into one game for half an hour, I can knock it out. Just a mention, I had to mention it because it's the game that I had zero expectations to, but yet I love going back to it every once in a while, whether I have a few hours to play or just a quick burst. And the last one I need to talk about, and I'm not going to go on a huge rant because I semi-did it in the last episode, Psychonauts 2. Though I have a lot of issues with Psychonauts, it does really stand out as a unique game. I do think it was bogged down by its release. This game was so attached to Game Pass that a lot of people forget that it's on PS4. And PS5 obviously through backwards compatibility. People forget that it's there. It kind of just released. It almost snuck up on me. The only reason I knew is because I can get the notifications. Obviously, I followed it a little more. But the date snuck up on me where it's like, oh, this comes out tomorrow. I'm like, where's the hype? I know I knew there was some development hell, and a lot of that stuff does show up in the game. But again, seeing these characters again, Double Fine just doesn't really, and Tim Schafer doesn't like to do sequels. So to get something which was one of my childhood favorite games back was really great. And the game is super, super good. There's just, a few things wrong with the way it was treated, the way it was released. Yeah. But it is a really solid, good game. And it touches on a lot of subjects that many people forget about, that it did really reflect on a lot of the mental health of society. Especially coming out of what we've all just experienced in 2019, 2020, and into 2021, it just helps reflect and get through some of that, and shows a good representation of it. So those are the ones I just had to give a quick shout out to, a pointing, and I didn't forget you, So what did you want to bring up?
Yeah, sure. So my number one would be Guardians. That just got edged out a little bit by Halo and Far Cry. Because honestly, it really just came down to performance, latter half. At the end of the day, I have to prioritize a game that, as much as I love it, 10 frames per second in the latter half of the game on a modern console is just not really acceptable in my book, unfortunately. And so I just got to docket points, as much as I hate to do it. So it got edged out a little bit. 2, Forza Horizon 5. I had it in my top 5, but the reality is, did it reinvent the wheel? No, not really. It's not a massive departure from Horizon 4. So as much as I'm loving it, I love what they've done in Mexico, and it's a beautiful game, and it plays so well, and I'm having a great time with it. It's Forza, you know what I mean? They've established something, and they've kind of stuck with it, and so I want to give it credit. It made it close to my top 5. It's certainly in my top 10, but it didn't quite get enough to do top 5. Next one you mentioned already is the Ghost of Tsushima with the Iki Island DLC. And specifically, that DLC just did a fantastic job of expanding an otherwise already amazing story and contextualizing Jin's character. So I'm just a massive fan of that game, and they made a great game even greater somehow. So shout out to them. I gotta give credit to Assassin's Creed Valhalla this year. Last year, they did a solid job giving us a pretty good Assassin's Creed game. I like it quite a bit, as you guys know. Other people are a little bit mixed on it. Some people don't like Assassin's Creed in general these days. I get it. Believe me, I do. But these, in terms of DLC drops, if you had the expansion or the season pass like I did, you got a lot of bang for your buck this year. And so just massive expansions with the Wrath of the Druids, Siege of Paris, and that crossover event all this year. They did just an absolutely fantastic job. The expansions of the map are really dope. There's so much amazing stuff to do in each system with its own different system of upgrading different settlements and stuff like that. It's really cool. And I love what they did for the story. And what I love about Siege of Paris specifically is they found the way to bridge the gap between new Assassin's Creed and old Assassin's Creed, which I think went super under the radar. The fact that people straight up didn't notice the fact that in Siege of Paris, you are in France, scoping down religious targets, gathering intel about them to kill them. Like, I mean, you don't get more old Assassin's Creed than that. You're wading through crowds and stuff like that. Like, we haven't done stuff like that, I mean, since, Unity, maybe? And so for them to be able to bring that into Valhalla, that honestly plays so differently, it's a lot tankier than the old Assassin's Creeds used to be. To find a way to make that work, I think was worth commending, to be honest with you. So shout out to AC Valhalla, they killed it, and I guess a side low shout out to Odyssey as well with their little DLC expansion too. Number 5 is probably something you don't see coming. The Scott Pilgrim physical re-release. That was this year. And I had to give it credit. I mean, a game that was lost to the void came back and had a physical release and is on Switch and plays phenomenally. So, I mean, can't get better than that. It's pretty much everything we ever wanted from the Scott Pilgrim game. And they actually did it. And I'm just super glad. And I had to give it some credit there. It is a re-release, so I can't put it in my top 5. But it's still a phenomenal game. So, shout out to them. And then lastly, the Castlevania Collection 2 with the Game Boy Advance games. I played the hell out of this game, this collection. I don't know if it's my most played this year, but I played a lot of it. It's a collection, so like I can't in good faith put it in my top 5 because then Castlevania would be very consistently in my top 5 almost every year because that's not fair. Man, I love this franchise. All 3 of these games are absolute bangers. Specifically, I've always loved Harmony of Dissonance, even though I know some people are more towards like Aria of Sorrow. All these games are just phenomenal, and I'm so glad to be able to have them on newer hardware. Obviously, we're still waiting for the Rondo and the Symphony of the Night collection. Obviously, we're still waiting for all the DS games. But for now, I think this is a great amount of Castlevania games that we have available on modern hardware, specifically on the Switch. It's so fun to play. Those are my notable mentions for the year. A lot of them just got edged out or didn't qualify. But I'm glad to bring a little bit more light on them.
No, of course, those are solid ones. Those are the things that I most of those I either considered or I just didn't get a chance to play.
Yeah, most definitely. And shout out to Psychonauts too, though, man. It is crazy that in 2021 a new Psychonauts game came out. I feel like not enough people talk about that.
It's like people forgot, and that was pretty recent, and people forgot.
No, but before we move on, you want to talk about a game that did not get any credit is freaking Oddworld, the new one. People did not talk about Oddworld. It's just such a shame. I feel like that's such a low-key franchise that does not get the credit it deserves.
Yep, it has its core fan base, and Sony stands with them, but it just disappears so quickly. And I never really played Oddworld games expecting to beat them all the way through, and that's just one that when it was time, I completely took it off my system and haven't gone back to.
Yeah, I thought Soulstorm was solid. Like, it's not like I was like in love with it, but it was a pretty solid game. I'm surprised like nobody's talking about it at all.
Yeah. I completely actually forgot about that one.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man.
And I love that franchise.
So, the big boy right here, Stinker of the Year. We're going to give the NeoVintage Stinker Award to a game that either let us down or just did not serve what it needed to serve. And this is more than just a bad experience. It's people who just dropped the ball completely. So, last year, if I had a Stinker Award, I probably, unfortunately, would have had to give it to Cyberpunk because they let me down so bad. But this year, I'm going with GTA, the Trilogy, the Definitive Edition. How dare y'all do that to me? To me? To my babies, my PS2 babies, and you treat them like this? It's an affront. And the worst thing that makes it from a bad game to a stinker is a game that should have, by all intents and purposes, worked. But somehow, it's like they almost tried to make it bad. They made PS2 games run bad on PS5s and the consoles of the Iki Island DLC. The Ratchet and Clank seamless processing. And there's frame rate drops in San Andreas, a reskinned San Andreas. Like, it's insane. And so, absolute stinker of the award to the whole collection, the whole thing. Grove Street, I don't know what y'all did. I don't know, Rockstar, why you put a phone game porting studio on a major collection like this. It's a shame. Y'all should be ashamed of yourselves. Stinker award. What you got, Steve?
Yeah, so obviously, if last year, if I would have had to do this, we didn't get to discuss it. Watchdog Legions. How dare
don't
you?
Remind me.
How dare you?
Correction, yes, they get it.
And I know everyone likes to go at Cyberpunk, right? Despite the technical aspects, you and I were lucky enough to play these on next-gen hardware.
Yeah. It's fun.
I played it on Xbox One. I think you played it on PlayStation 5. But obviously we played the old-gen versions of it. So my experience wasn't as bad. Watch Dogs Legions was such a bad game that it eventually became an insulting game that they thought they could get away with. But that's last year.
They killed my save, bruh.
Yeah. If I never see another pig mask with a cigar, it'll be too soon.
Oh my god.
But for this year, early on, January 28th, 2021, a little... I want to make sure... yes, all right. It was January 28th, 2021. A little game by Bloober Team released called The Medium.
Oh, man. Not the stinker to The Medium.
Let me tell you. I've never seen a game be so average to the point where it just got insultingly average. To the point that this was, until it released on PS5, I think in September, this was the first Xbox Series X/S exclusive we received.
Yep.
Now I understand that Assassin's Creed got upgraded, but this was exclusive to the Series X and S, so it was not on Xbox One. Where Cyberpunk, Assassin's Creed, Yakuza, all these games that were up-resed, this was the exclusive one. You could not play this on an Xbox One. I'm sure you can now through cloud, but don't do that. This game, which taunted to be a psychological horror, third-person, throwback to the Silent Hills, to the original Resident Evils. I don't understand what game some of these people were playing. IGN gave this game a 9 out of 10.
Really?
Let me tell you, yes. This game, not only is it insulting in its story and its gameplay and its mechanics, it just doesn't go anywhere. It's a slog. It isn't... I know some people want to give it... It's a walking simulator, but it's not. It has semi-tank controls and puzzles that are so dumb that they insult your intelligence. That the fact that to jank you from knowing where you have to go, they purposely hard camera swap you. And this is not to say that I didn't have moments. I did have moments that I was like, oh, okay, I see where it's going with this creepiness and this monster going to you. But nothing is explained. Where half the story is you figuring out on an older... the way I can explain it I don't want to get to spoilers specifically. But first of all, don't play this game. But the fact that there is a big M. Night Shyamalan, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Shyamalan, there's a twist, right? There's this big twist if you've seen any of his movies, obviously. But it is dumb. It doesn't make sense, and it makes what you did in the whole game useless. I beat this game. I beat this game start to end. And it was hard. The fact that graphically this game looked bad. This was a canceled Wii game years ago that came back to light. And I know that's ignored. People watched that from existence.
Oh, really? Was it?
Yeah, I don't understand why. I'll take it. It may have been for the Wii U. I could be wrong. But this is something that was supposed to release in 2012. That got released in 2021. And it still looks like a game from back then. This game... I mean, you can look it up. This game was announced back then. I don't know what happened to it or what went on with it. But to see this game, and they're touting it, this runs on Unreal Engine 4. The only thing Unreal Engine did is let it do the split screen sort of concept, which was sort of cool, but useless in many aspects. I just don't think... I just have to give it to it. A game I was super excited to go into. Bloober Team, I may not be the most fondest of everything they've done. But for them to finally take a game, not necessarily a licensed game, because I know they did like Layers of Fear and Blair Witch, but for them finally to take a game where they had no expectations and to drop the ball. I mean, the game looked cool from a few aspects, but everything that looked cool didn't. It's just bad. It's just what an average game that I felt when I beat it, I felt sad and insulted by. So I have to give him my 2021 Stinker of the Year award.
Damn, didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Medium, wow. Yeah, I haven't thought about Medium in forever.
Exactly. There's no reason to.
Wow. All right, cool. Next up, we got low-key games we recommend. Now, these are just like either a couple or one sleeper that we have. that we feel like maybe people didn't pay enough attention to, or that we'd like to give our little recommendation to you guys for 2021. So I have two. The first one is one that I actually mentioned before, but I would like to bring it up again. It's Backbone. It's currently on Game Pass, and it's kind of a side-scrolling detective pixel art game. The game is brilliant, well written. The music is great. The art style is gorgeous. Kind of imagine kind of like a pixel dense version of like an Octopath Traveler with that integration between 3D and 2D. And it looks it's very atmospheric, and you're kind of like in a neo-noir dark city, and you're walking around gathering clues and meeting people. You're like a personal investigator or a private investigator. And yeah, the game is just phenomenal. Haven't beat it though, and I would like to get back to it at some point. Just got a little sidetracked on it, but yeah, definitely check out Backbone, especially if you're on Xbox. Go check it out. I think it's on PlayStation. Don't quote me on that, but it's definitely on Xbox. Definitely on Game Pass. And then second off, XO1. This is a really, really cool game that came out not super long ago, and I've been playing it kind of on and off here and there. And I actually bumped into it for the first time because the developer was posting TikToks. And so I bumped into it, and I was like, oh, look at this guy's game. It looks pretty cool. And it finally came out, and it came to Game Pass, and I was like, oh, that's really awesome. And so the cool thing about it is there's kind of a light story to it, but a lot of it's very similar to Journey in the way that the story is told through what you do and what you experience, less than like words and like cutscenes, if that makes sense. And so the cool thing about it is you're kind of like a sphere, and you're in these giant, expansive, empty planets with all these hills and weather and water and all, and sometimes in some places they're volcanic, and you basically use momentum and gravity to kind of fly or roll or gain momentum, and you're kind of just ever moving forward and playing around with gravity and angles to kind of increase your speed and glide over large amounts and hit an ending point. And on that journey, you kind of experience really cool things on this planet, and there's interesting collectibles that can kind of modify your... It's not a ship, really. You turn into a sphere that can turn into a UFO. So it's a really hard game to describe, obviously. But I would highly recommend anybody who's into anything remotely like atmospheric and something to vibe out to. XO1's an excellent opportunity to do that, because it's not only it runs great, but it's intense at times. It's melancholic at times. It's relaxing at times. It's really, really interesting what they've done there. So highly recommend XO1 for anybody. So those are my two low-key games.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll have to check that one out. I haven't heard much about that. So yeah, I also have two games that I wanted to just sort of bring up. That they're one I'm currently playing, one I played when it released. So in the summer, we got Neo: The World Ends With You. Yeah. I feel like this is another game that's kind of suffering what like Psychonauts did. It just kind of slithered out. It was exclusive on Switch and PS4 only. I do think it suffers the fact that they didn't port the first one onto PS4. And later I think came to PC. I think this one came to PC later, but again, the first one may or may have not. I know it's a mix. But to be back in this world is really great. The style of this game has always spoken to me. So obviously, Neo: The World Ends With You being just a sequel, obviously. You seeing some returning characters is really fun. Seeing the different aspects, seeing the city in a different light, the sort of weird graphic style that it went to a more cohesive gameplay. I know a lot of people had issues with playing the final mix version that came to Switch. With that game, you had to play only on the touchscreen. You could play it on the TV, but you had to use Waggle basically. To have a game that you can sit there and play with buttons and an analog stick is really cool. A lot of these characters really stand out. I understand that they came out a while ago and said the sales were very soft, and which makes me sad because I feel like this is where the series ends. To the point, I mean, I never expected the series to come back. I mean, a 2007 game to get it's re-released a couple years ago, and finally to get a sequel with even better characters and an even better story. I just think this is one that's going under people's radar, and unfortunately I think its time has passed. I don't think this game is going to find a out of nowhere strike of popularity, but it's something that I really loved to go back to. It was such a fun experience to go back to this version of everyone in this world. It was really cool. It was just really cool, and I do think it's if a little bit more of a push in this game probably would have been in my top 10. I probably would have put it in a top 10 list, but it is something that I just feel like came out and then just immediately sizzled away. It's also one of those games that just it appeared at my house because I pre-ordered it on Amazon and just showed up. I had no idea it was even out. Like I opened the package and I was shocked. But really, really, it's a really good game, especially if you loved the first one. I think it's hard for me to imagine a world that someone liked the first, The World Ends With You, and not like the sequel.
Yeah, I gotta check that out. I haven't touched it.
Yeah. So the other game, now this is the game I've been playing. I didn't want to talk about when I started it at the beginning of the show. But it's a game we talked about when it was announced during the Xbox event in May, the Xbox 2020 event, called Chorus. But it was spelt differently with a V, but it's pronounced Chorus in the game. Now, this is that space combat video game we saw a while ago. I had no idea it released. It apparently released at the beginning of December, but obviously at the beginning of December, we were all on that Halo train. So I've played a few hours. I'm not too deep. But I have to praise the game because I think it's really, really solid. I think it's like a really good game. Like in a world where I love these, Star Wars has sort of come and gone in a sense. So having a space game, basically, in a world where we don't get Star Fox anymore, in a world that we're not really getting Star Wars spaceship games. I know we got Squadrons, but that was, a little bit different. The fact that we get a really good game with space battles, with solid controls, with special powers, though the story is like overly in your face, like there's a lot of lore and you're sort of picking up, it almost feels like a sequel where you're picking up and you're finding out of what happened about an event that just happened. So with your main character, Nara, it's really just weird a little bit, but the gameplay is super solid. I think it's really great. I think the ship designs are cool. I think there are some aspects of the lore of how you connect with your ship and how you connect with the antagonist and your relationship with the antagonist is all really, really good. There's some issues. I'm playing on PC, so a lot of these issues I heard is primarily on the PS5 and 4 version. That I can't speak to. I'm playing it on a PC where it doesn't seem to be the most demanding game, so I'm not sure what the issue are. But it solves a lot of problems that we saw in like these spaceship games where you're looking for just pretty much an emblem on the edge of your screen just to finally turn to and shoot. They circumvent that with a couple of mechanics with some powers and some auto balancing in your ship. So it's a game that I'm excited to talk more probably next time on our next episode, because I'm just so early on where I like the gameplay, but I got to see where else this leads to. And apparently it's pretty long. So I don't know how much that works out and what changes later on. Because the few bosses I fought have been very identical already. So that's already kind of a knock to it. But it's a game I've really liked so far from the beginning. So I had to at least... It wasn't enough to mention, but this is kind of these low-key games that... I didn't know it was out. And I don't think anyone really does.
Yeah, no, I had no clue about that game, but I'm gonna have to look into it now.
Yeah, it'd be one of those perfect Game Pass games, which I know it is on Xbox. I don't believe it's on any Game Pass service yet.
Yeah, it looks like we have a lot of play then. Yeah. So that was our Game Awards, our NeoVintage Awards that we applied there, and we'll hopefully be able to do that next year as well. And then see how 2022 bodes for us. And then in the next show, guys, we'll be able to do our 2021 in review, where we kind of take a look back at how last year was from all the major contributions from Sega to Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, and just see how everybody fared, what were the major games, and overall as a year, what we thought it was. So that's going to be a really fun discussion you guys have to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I can't wait to discuss that. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. This is your bro, and I'm here with
Steve. Hope you guys enjoyed.
And we'll see you then. Bye.